Patreon. It's a Patreon episode.
It's the Groove Tube.
What is that? Ah, the Groove Tube. Oh, yes. I know what that is.
It, but it's the movie, the Groove Tube.
We may have to talk about that at some point.
I know. That's a movie I look forward to covering, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm not wearing the T-shirt of the thing we're talking about when we're talking about it.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I mix that up a little. So I could have worn my Uncle Floyd and Oogie shirt today.
We're not getting to that. Shh. That second part. That's part 2.
See, spoiler.
Part 2.
I didn't want to give a spoiler.
Okay. Welcome to a Patreon episode. What we're going to talk about is puppets, because I promised you a puppet countdown. There's so much to talk about that I'm dividing it into 2 parts. I hope you don't mind. Also, I don't really think you want a 4-hour episode of us talking about puppets, because that's what's going to end up happening. Every time I do this with Joe, I say, we're going to make this a half hour. And it ends up being like an hour and a half. So I can tell you this was going to be a 4-hour episode if I didn't chop it in half. So this is part 1 of the puppet countdown with lots of honorable mentions. And of course, it'll be chock full of video for you to enjoy.
Chock full of video.
Chock. What did you
Not
think?
Not just regular full.
No.
Chock.
I always use that expression and it's so dumb, isn't it? I know it's dumb. I also use the word exquisite too much. I'm sure you've noticed that by now. I say that all the time.
I have noticed that, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I gotta stop.
I'm not quite sure about the chock full, what the etymology of chock full is.
It has to have the O, chock full O, which is
chock full O, of course.
So stupid. Okay, so what we're going to do is count down puppets. Now, I have a little slight puppet obsession. Not really that I go to see puppets in person, which have I done that? I guess.
Well, as far as we know, you might be seeing them in private.
Yes, I do see them in private, actually. And of course, I have a little bit of an obsession with kiddie programming, which overlaps very nicely with this. But more than all of that is creepy stuff. I love creepy stuff. And, that is a world where puppets intersect beautifully with horror. And
a lot of overlap between children's stuff and creepy stuff. For some reason, if you push children's stuff just a tad in the wrong direction, it goes right into creepy. That's the first place it seems to go.
It's so interesting, isn't it?
Why is it so easy to make something that's supposed to be cute for children turns creepy if you do one slight wrong thing?
And what is it about the aesthetic of the early part of the last century or the late part of the century before that?
Oh, yeah.
Where they had such a strange sense of what was cute, and it was often just horrifying. Anyway, so we'll be talking a little bit about that. So this will be countdown 10 through 6. First of all, some things that were excluded from this list. For example, stop motion animation. I love I love stop motion.
Yeah.
And those are they're often called puppets. Like the Rankin and Bass. Yeah, Rankin and Bass called their little dummies puppets. Those were considered puppets.
But that's not a puppet because you're creating a performance frame by frame. That's animation.
And look at Puppetoons, right? The amazing Puppetoons that George Pal used to do. Those were not puppets, right? They were posed figurines.
Yeah, but the skill and the craft of creating stop motion animation is not puppetry.
So we're excluding that. I'm also excluding ventriloquist dummies.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I agree with that one as well.
Okay.
I think that very much is not puppetry.
There will be one controversial entry, but we will discuss that. We will hash that out.
Okay. Also, ventriloquists and ventriloquist dummies should be excluded from society as a whole, really. I think they should be shunned. They should be ostracized whenever possible.
Yeah, agreed.
Not a fan.
Now talk about old-timey scariness, man. There's nothing that beats an old ventriloquist dummy. Okay, the other thing I'm excluding, and some people will probably get mad at me for this, is special effects puppets like Yoda. I know.
And I take a little bit of issue with that because I think that the space slug from The Empire Strikes Back is a pure puppet. It's pure, and that's pure puppetry.
I know. And those are absolutely technically puppets. I'm not denying that those are puppets. See, Yoda's not supposed to be a puppet. I'm really going for things that are like, hi, I'm a puppet. I'm really going kind of for that.
Okay. Yeah, I see. Things where they would share a billing with Spinal Tap.
It's a slippery slope because
Puppet show is the billing here.
Well, like Jabba the Hutt's a puppet, right? Jabba the Hutt's a puppet. Like you said,
absolutely.
The robot in Interstellar that Bill Irwin built is a puppet.
That's puppetry. Absolutely.
The baby from Eraserhead is a puppet. The Gremlins are puppets. You had actually suggested the Land of the Lost Dinosaur. There's one shot like in the opening.
In long shots, the T-Rex in Land of the Lost is stop motion, but when they cut to a close-up of it, it's a hand puppet.
Yeah, it's a ham.
And
So
that's
yeah,
one of my favorite things.
that's the thing is often in movies they mix it, with CGI.
Yeah,
Now
sure.
they mix it with CGI, so it's a little too dicey. So just so you know, I those are the criteria that excluded candidates. All right, let's just start the countdown, and then I'll throw the honorable mentions in between the numbers. Okay.
Okay.
Um.
I
Okay.
look forward to it.
Okay. So number
I'm
10.
poised. I'm
Number
ready.
10 is probably what some people would argue should be number one. Number 10 is Punch. Punch.
Mm,
Punch.
yes. The
Punch.
classic Mr. Punch, the sort of large-chinned, hook-nosed Mr. Punch.
The icon of all puppetry is Punch. Punch is the puppet. It's the origin almost to what you would think of as of what we know of as puppetry.
He's
So
the proto children's character that it seems very confusingly aimed at children because he's very, very unpleasant and angry.
Punch is horrifying. So Punch falls into the absolutely creepy. I mean, creepy, like horrifying, creepy, scary looking, but also violent. We complain about Tom and Jerry and Bugs Bunny, right, being violent. Punch goes back to the 17th century or earlier. Okay.
What I would say in Mr. Punch's defense, the violence is really the only thing entertaining about him.
Yes, that's pretty much the whole thing.
And it reminds me of the scene in The Godfather Part 2 where Don Fanucci is at the feast and he sees the puppet show, and that's all they're doing is hitting each other with sticks like Punch and Judy. And the head of the Black Hand Mafia from Italy waves it off and says, "Oh, too violent."
Yes, right, exactly. Well, Punch.
He's killed soon after, by the way.
So just a little history. I'm not going to go crazy with each of these because we have so much to cover. Punch and Judy. It's mainly known as Punch and Judy. Again, it has roots back to the 16th century. Probably started in Italy in the Commedia dell'arte. I don't know how to pronounce that, but that's where the Harlequin concept of Harlequin came from. So much what sketches basically came from was what they were doing in Italy. But so the figure of Punch kind of came out of that, including the name Pulcinelli. Puccinella is kind of what they called it. Puccinello,
which is
of
still
course,
sort of synonymous with clown.
Yeah.
In a weird way. It's used sometimes,
But it really locked it, into place in the UK. Many consider the birth of the traditional British Punch to be 1662. He was the first marionette. He was originally a marionette.
Yes.
And it was actually originally Punch and Joan. Joan was the name. But Judy was just so much more fun to say that it really ended up being Punch and Judy. It was originally for adults. It was very violent. We got the word slapstick from this because he would be banging his
slap with a stick, right?
They would slap with a stick. And there was a story that was told repeatedly over and over and over again, which is basically like Punch and Judy have a baby. She leaves the baby with Punch. Punch accidentally like either kills or sits on or destroys the baby, does some horrible thing. Judy comes back and beats him up and they beat each other up. And sometimes the cops show up. Sometimes the devil would show up. When it was for adults, the devil would show up. They got rid of that when they got a little more kid oriented. There was always, for some reason, a crocodile. There was just always included a crocodile. I don't know why. I don't know.
It just makes for a good puppet shape.
It is. It is actually. That makes sense. And Punch always had a very distinct voice, which was called the swazzle, which almost sounded like you were talking through a kazoo. And that's like a tradition. If you don't see Punch with that weird little voice, it's not a real Punch show.
I get it. Yeah. There's a combination of that kind of angry voice and the pinched features that make an angry face and the nonstop swatting. Punch and Judy is not just their names, it's what he does. And it's the nonstop swatting. It's just very, very frightening. But the accumulation of all these frightening things for some reason seems to be make the delight of children everywhere.
Yeah. And whenever they show this, kids are just laughing their asses off. They're just cackling. So I don't know. I haven't seen that happen, but it happens in every movie that you see kids watching these shows on.
Well, you'll want to see the Marx Brothers film Monkey Business.
Yes. There's a Punch and Judy scene in Monkey Business.
Where Harpo substitutes himself for Punch in that.
And he's really convincing. It's
could
really
be,
brilliant.
He could be a puppet. Yeah.
You always see it with that sort of red and white striped kind of cloth in front of it. That was traditional. And it ended up being a traditional beach along the coasts of England It was a big beach resort thing, and they would do multiple shows per day. And you'd see this in parks and all this stuff. It was just like a staple of entertainment for kids
Yeah.
that, you just couldn't escape. And of course, we got the expression "pleased as punch" from that.
Oh,
Anyway,
okay.
and then, of course, Punch
Yeah.
magazine is a famous humor magazine that came out of New York City. We still, it's right. That was in New York City?
Punch was British.
Oh, was it British? Oh, Punch
Absolutely.
was British. Okay, sorry.
Absolutely. Yes.
Puck is the New York one.
And by the way, Patreon subscribers, be sure to tune in next week when we count down the top 10 real life humans who look like Punch.
Yeah.
And maybe someone you know might make the list.
Number 9 is an easy one, so I'm not going to spend too much time on number 9, but it is. I had to do it because it's so great. Kim Jong-il in Team America.
Okay.
Is that okay? That's a puppet. I mean, it's a movie puppet, but that is a puppet.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's become pretty iconic. It's the first really extremely political puppet. There's not a lot of political puppets.
I can think of a few. Wait a
Yeah.
minute. Hold on. I don't want to give spoilers for what's coming up later in your list, but I mean one big political puppetry TV show springs to
Oh
mind.
yeah, that's true. That's true. The puppets in that movie are so amazing. It's going to go down in history as, this unbelievable puppet movie that people will, I think, honestly, 100 years from now, people are going to remember this movie. Does that sound crazy? But I think it's true.
No, it
Actually.
doesn't. And if you're interested in that, be sure and listen to your entire episode about it. Because you did a great job, and I think you'd find it really entertaining.
Thank you. Yeah, it sounded like a pretty good movie.
Yeah.
So the humor, the fact that it was very offensive adds so much edge to it. It's a pretty iconic puppet. I think Kim Jong-il in Team America is a pretty iconic puppet. So this is my list. So hey, you gotta just deal with that.
And sadly, the real Kim Jong-il is long gone, and that's really all we have to remember him by.
Yes.
Our cherished Kim Jong-il.
Let's get in a few honorable mentions. So of course I had mentioned "Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared." So I'm gonna nominate Yellow Guy from "Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared." That guy's name is Yellow Guy, and I just think that's quite an amazing bit of puppet artifact right there. That web series. Okay, Kukla, Fran, and Ollie. Do you know about that?
Yes, I do.
That? I actually remember they used to show repeats of those. I think when I was
they showed that
back in the 70s.
They showed that when I was a kid. I kind of enjoyed them. It took me a while to figure out who was Kukla, Fran, and Ollie. Who was who in that?
I never liked it. I found it boring, but so it ran from 1947 to 1957. And Fran was Fran Allison. She was the human woman who dealt with this little clown puppet and a one-toothed dragon. And that was one of those shows that was entirely ad-libbed. Like they had a skeletal idea of what the show was going to be about, and then they just ad-libbed it. And to me, that gave it a very odd quality. There's a few other shows that do that.
Curb Your Enthusiasm does that.
Yes.
So very similar to Kukla, Fran, and Ollie in that respect.
So it's got a weird pacing to it. It is very warm and personable. They say people love that show so much. I mean, obviously it went on for 10 years that when they shortened it from a half hour to 15 minutes so they could squeeze in the Bob and Ray show.
Well, that's interesting.
People got really upset. People got really upset. And they wrote in letters and said, how dare you shorten Kukla, Fran, and Ollie? To me, it's very elementary. I don't think it's that funny. I don't think they were trying to be that funny. But it's kind of more of a personality puppet show, and Kukla was pretty creepy looking. Kukla was pretty creepy looking. So
yeah, I didn't like Kukla. Nobody liked the little clown puppet with the most puppets where the two arms or these fingers don't do it for me at all. I don't want to see that. I don't know why, but I don't like that at all.
Little too simple. Okay.
Yeah.
But amazingly, it was hugely popular. It went on for years.
I wanted to grab that dragon's one tooth and just pull it out.
I hated that.
That was what I remember.
Okay, Crow T Robots.
Okay, now you're talking. One of my favorites.
Yeah.
But it begs the question: why only Crow T Robot from that show?
I had to pick one.
Okay, I see.
So often, the one is representing the all, and often it's representing the puppet person, the puppet master, him or herself. So let's just say that's true.
I would say Crow has the most moving parts because if like Tom Servo, there's really only his mouth moves and his arms just kind of dangle. So there's really not that much puppetry to do, I guess maybe you could say. And Gypsy hardly makes many appearances. So really Crow is there's the most puppetry going on with Crow T Robot. So I could see that.
know the origin story of like why there were puppets in that show?
It all came from Joel Hodgson, who had been into puppetry at that time, and he created the show as a very low budget local phenomenon in Minneapolis. And he was good at like in making things in his garage, putting bits of junk together and hot gluing things together. And it was all jury rigged and made for a very, very low budget for a local station in Minnesota. I mean, if you look at the puppets, they're made of found objects. Tom Servo is made from a gumball machine and like a beer barrel, and part of Crow is a plastic bowling pin that's been cut in half that forms his mouth, and part of a hockey mask, which is his crown on his head, and all these bits from a lamp that form his arms. He's all put together from these parts, which now
Wonderful.
people are sourcing those parts because they're making replicas at home.
Yeah.
They're trying to figure out exactly which model of hockey mask it was and getting them.
That's awesome.
There's whole websites and message boards devoted to people recreating the Mystery Science Theater bots at home.
That's great.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's
and I
pretty
think
impressive. He came close to getting a top 10. Yeah, that was close. All right, another weird one just for honorable mention is Morso. Now, this is a Finnish, as in Finland, series from 1999 to 2001. It was a lost series until last year. Oh, people had memories of this show in Finland. People had rumor of it. There was like one or two little photographs of this puppet called Morso, and it is the most horrifying image of a puppet. It is absolutely in the top 5 like most horrifying puppet images you've ever seen. And so people like were passing this image around the internet going, what is this? And then someone's like, that's that Finnish show, but nobody could find them. And last year somebody finally uncovered those episodes. So Morso was based on a children's book series, is intentionally supposed to be ugly because that's kind of the lesson of the story, is like love things that are ugly. He's based on a pug dog, but pugs are cute. I don't know where they got that from. And it includes a donkey, it includes a few other characters, but man, he is really impressively horrifying for a puppet.
Do you think that has to do with the whole sort of Finnish somber aesthetic that they pretty much have?
It feels like it.
It's a cliche that the Scandinavians, particularly the Finnish, are dour and somber all the time. And that may be true. I haven't been to Helsinki. I have no idea what it's like there. I've heard it's dark a lot.
Yeah, it's dark a lot.
So
it definitely comes from a dark place, I would say.
It comes from a dark place, both literally and metaphorically. What is it about some cultures that have nailed cute, and like the Japanese have nailed it? They're so good at cute, and other cultures not so much.
They're also good at horrifying, but they know the difference. Like they know it. They so know the difference. Like they know when they are being horrifying, they are being like bone-chillingly horrifying, and when they're being cute, it is like you just want to eat whatever it is that they're handing you.
My experience in Japan is that the Japanese culture is that children are very important, and maybe in Finland they don't give a shit about children. I don't know.
They want them to grow up fast.
Grow up fast here.
All right.
Drink some potato whiskey and grow some hair on your arms and get to work.
Are you ready for number 8? You're going to love number 8.
I don't know if I'm ready for number 8.
You're going to love number 8. Number 8's a good one.
All right.
Rod Hall and Emu.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Rod Hall and Emu.
I mean, now, when I was putting together this list, I had completely forgotten about Emu. I had no recollection. And when I saw it, I immediately was like, I remember laughing my ass off at that puppet.
70s variety shows. He showed up a lot.
Here's the thing. It was so funny.
Tonight, I'm going to show you how to keep your emu in tip-top condition. As all of you who have emus know, cleaning the feet is of primary importance.
It was really clever. It looks so simple. It looks kind of stupid, but it was one of the funniest things. I mean, you would just be crying laughing when he did that.
But just like Punch, it was primarily a delivery system for violence.
It was. Okay, so we got to explain who Emu is. So Rod Hall he was British, but he went to
I thought he was
Australia.
Australian. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, he was British.
he went to
Emigrate
Australia.
to Australia.
He
Okay.
emigrated, and he became known on a children's show. And Emu was developed there, and it's very controversial who came up with the idea, but whatever. Basically, it's his arm, with a beak, and holding it. It's that the simplest kind of puppet you could
Yeah, and he
possibly
has
do.
there's a false arm that looks like he's holding the bird, but
Right,
his
false
real
arm.
arm is up inside of it. Yeah.
But what he did with that puppet.
I was saying what a nice creature you were. Now don't let me down. Don't let me down. Mr. Parkinson sent his regards, by the way. Oh!
It was assault, is what it was. He just
assault.
committed assault with the puppet. That was his whole act.
And he would be warned when he'd go on talk shows, like, okay, like take it easy on Johnny Carson, okay? He would not do that.
Who's a little emu?
It likes
You see?
He famously ignored all warnings from production people and from the stars themselves to please, like, don't really actually hurt me. And he would hurt them.
At the start of the Hudson Brothers variety show, there were 4 of them. After the emu, there were only 3.
That's right.
He killed a Hudson brother with the emu puppet.
Now, I don't find, hostility and violence funny, but he was really funny. He was really funny when he was genuinely witty. But there is a dark side to this. He was apparently kind of a real jerk. He was a real jerk, right? Surprise, surprise. Like as we learn.
You mean it wasn't the emu that was the jerk?
About all these comedians.
Shocked.
Yeah. He apparently would kind of harm women with this puppet. He would try to cop feels. According to Wikipedia, at least 2 people have publicly reported Hull's sexual assault of women using Emu as a cover. He used the puppet to feel up women and stick his hand between people's legs. People's legs. The late veteran comedian producer Michael Hull said, "Look, Rod, you've got your hand in that emu up girls' skirts and squeezing their tits, doing things you would get locked up for."
And then he said, "This is great.
This is the ultimate, like what
youth. Yeah, I'm so jealous."
It was the 70s. And
yeah.
This, people were just like, whatever,
Yeah. The next thing he said was, "And can I borrow the puppet?"
Yeah. So it really sucks. So again, he was often on the Hudson Brothers Razzle Dazzle show.
Yep.
He appeared on tons of talk shows, and he eventually did get his own show. They gave him several TV series, which I barely remember. I just remember him being on talk shows and that kind of thing. I remember the Hudson Brothers show. But the reason he gets on this list, even despite being an asshole, he really was good with that puppet. You really believed. It was one of those cases where your brain just skipped into that mode where you felt like you were looking at a bird.
It's taken to you. Sorry.
Yeah, go right. That's coffee.
Is it?
It's coffee.
He doesn't like coffee.
You really felt like you were looking at a creature.
And the thing with a will of its own.
Yeah.
And I think it's very easy to tip someone's brain over into that, actually. I think we're predisposed to anthropomorphize objects. And
I think he was very good at it. I think it was because he was very good. I think other people wouldn't have pulled it off. But also he was really genuinely funny with the violence, with the way he attacked people. There was a wit about him that worked, that really worked. So anyway, all right, so Emu, let's do some more honorable mentions.
All right.
Benny and Cecil. So this was a 50s, really 1949 it started. Time for Beanie was the name of the puppet show, and then eventually it was a cartoon called Benny and Cecil, but Time for Beanie was a puppet show. It was very popular, and it's kind of interesting because it was created and executed by Bob Clampett. And Bob Clampett was actually already very successful.
The Warner Brothers, yeah.
For Looney Tunes
and Merry
Melodies.
Daffy Duck.
He created Daffy Duck, Porky Pig and Tweety Pie. He created those characters. And you'll actually hear in Cecil's voice, you'll recognize the the sound of Looney Tunes character. One of the characters is kind of similar to that you hear often. One of the sort of trope characters.
Aye, aye, sir, Uncle Captain, sir. Here, Whitey.
With a kid with a beanie and a dragon named Cecil. Now the kid is just another perfect example of like, why would any kid want to look at that face? I mean, he's just another, he is another one where it's just like, I cannot comprehend who would design that face on a puppet. Terrifying. Imagine in the middle of the night, you're a little kid sleeping, and at the foot of your bed, boom, this face pops up. Just chills. I get chills just thinking about it. I want to mention, I picked Terry from Pee-wee's Playhouse, but again, that's kind of the mass of them are, worth or noteworthy. Pee-wee's Playhouse's puppets, or all the iterations of Pee-wee's presentations of what he was doing,
I think Terry is a good choice, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were designed by Wayne White, who is also an illustrator, cartoonist.
I know that. I know all about Wayne White. I once got to go to the animation studio where they did all the stop motion for Pee-wee's Playhouse. They didn't do, obviously that wasn't where they did Terry or any of the puppet characters. And then there was a ventriloquist dummy, Billy Baloney, but that doesn't count because he's a ventriloquist dummy.
So that was a great use of puppets. I want to shout out for New Jersey people and I guess tri-state New York people, Sherlock from Magic Garden. Do you remember Magic Garden?
I sure do. Of course. I never missed Magic Garden. I loved Magic Garden.
This is the garden of make-believe, the magical garden of make-believe.
Where flowers jumble and birds play tricks and a magic tree grows lollipop sticks.
I don't remember the theme song.
Yeah,
Which one was Paula? Which one was Carol?
I don't know, but we had a crush on both of them. Even
no, just one. And that's why I asked which
Carol?
one is which.
Who did you have a crush on? Carol, right?
The auburn-haired one.
Yeah.
The one who wasn't Italian, because I grew up with Italians.
Okay, so anyway, that's Sherlock was a pink squirrel. And it's just, again, it's my list. I'm sorry, but I grew up with Sherlock.
He was a well-designed puppet. He had a really nice, friendly look to him, and he didn't look creepy at all. He looked like he was a very professionally designed puppet. I always thought he was a good puppet. And I liked the way they did his tail because it was sort of pinned to the back of his head, so it would always stick up.
Yep. I'm going to nominate as an honorable mention the puppet in Aesop Rock's music video for the song Kirby.
Thanks, Curbs, looking like a millie. Keep an old man sharp, keep a cold chantilly. Spun plum dizzy in a frisky moment. Never lands on her feet, though I think she's broken. Mouse are in training, nap on the toaster. Decorator cubicle with dogs playing poker. 15 years taking prescriptions, now a shrink like, I don't know, maybe get a kitten.
It's a song about a kitten. It's one of the greatest little songs ever in the world, and I believe Aesop Rock's from Brooklyn. They're neighbors of ours, and you don't see puppets in music videos too often. This is a very outstanding one. So we may
other than Land of Confusion from Genesis.
Yes,
you don't see too many.
And that did not get nominated.
And we're no. Oh, well, I guess we have
not that video. Yeah. All right, here's one that I haven't seen, but I had to include it. So we're going to include Simba. I assume Simba was a puppet in The Lion King. So The Lion King is one of the most famous puppet shows ever. Of course, it was a huge hit Broadway show, and it still is.
I've seen The Lion King on Broadway.
You've seen it? Oh, there you
yes,
go. So which puppet? You pick a puppet then. Pick a puppet.
Well, in what they have, in Simba is played by an actor. All of the main characters are actors wearing costumes.
But there are puppets, right? They're considered.
But there is very, very wonderful puppetry in the show, because at some point, the other animals, the ones that don't get speaking roles, like giraffes and elephants, come out, and they're puppeteered in various ways. And sometimes, and they walk through the audience. There's a point of the show where through either aisle, these full-size elephants and giraffes are coming through, and there are actors and people inside them sort of controlling them in various ways. Almost like rod puppets, almost like the sort of Japanese rod puppets, where there's somebody.
They definitely have mechanical parts that are.
Right, and there's there are people inside who are like dressed in black who are controlling them, and it's very, very theatrical and very, very cool, and it's so impressive how they get almost realistic movement out of these things that don't look real at all. So
Yeah.
I think that those count very much as puppets, and
Right.
really artful puppetry going on there. If
Okay,
you
good.
have a chance to see The Lion King on Broadway, that's one of the best parts of the show.
And so
Yeah.
Julie Taymor is of course the person who we're talking to. So this is kind of a salute to her, I suppose, more than anything. And I didn't realize this, but she directed the movie Frida, which I thought was a fantastic movie. That was the Salma Hayek version of the biopic
Yeah, I
of
haven't seen that.
Frida. A great movie. She also did Across the Universe, that Beatles kind of movie. But she's also done a lot of productions with puppetry in it, a lot of production with puppets or masks or like all kinds of very heavy arts and crafts kind of elements to it. After The Lion King, she did Spider-Man, Turn Off the Dark. But I thought that was kind of funny. I didn't realize she was actually part of that. I didn't know that whole.
Yeah, well, if you want to talk about Broadway puppets, I think there's obviously one very obvious thing we could mention, which is one of the most well remembered and
That's for the next show.
most beloved Broadway shows involving puppets, and that was King Kong the musical. And that came out about, I think it was about 2 years ago or something like that, or maybe just before COVID was running, but they made King Kong the movie into a Broadway musical. And King Kong was full size and was a large, enormous rod puppet controlled by a gang of puppeteers, just in the sort of same Lion King way, in this very theatrical way. And it was beautiful. If you look at, you can see clips of it online, and what they did with this King Kong puppet, which was sort of, I guess part of it was hung from wires, and part of it was controlled by these controllers. And there was a whole army of people whose movements were coordinated to get a performance out of this 25-foot tall ape puppet on stage live in front of an audience. It was pretty amazing. And in a similar vein, they adapted they didn't adapt the movie into the show. The show started first, and then it was adapted into the movie War Horse. And the horse was achieved on stage in the same way, as a kind of a theatrical, almost sort of Japanese style rod puppet with the performers visible on stage, dressed in black.
That one I considered. I didn't include that, but I considered it. Yeah, that was a contender. And then I thought you were going to mention something else, which we will mention in part 2.
I have no idea what you're referring to.
Yes, one of the most famous puppet Broadway shows. Now, the last one we did, number 8, was Emu, the horrifying Emu. So the number 7 is an antidote to that, which is Daniel Striped Tiger comes in at number 7. Mr. Rogers,
yes,
Daniel Striped Tiger. I'm partial to Henrietta Pussycat. I loved Henrietta Pussycat, but Daniel Striped Tiger is really the legend from that menagerie of puppets. And Mr. Rogers considered him himself. That was his alter ego, was Daniel Striped Tiger. Daniel Striped Tiger was very shy, and he had trouble expressing his feelings when he was sad, when he was angry. He often expressed that he felt very defective. I mean, he was the for kids who, like me, had very little self-confidence. I know maybe I don't come off that way, but there were kids when I was little who thought I couldn't talk. That's how shy I was. I was really shy as a little kid. He was for kids like that who, were just like kind of feeling like they were behind a glass wall and didn't know how to connect to other people. And I can't imagine how many kids that tiger helped. And it really was Mr. Rogers' alter ego. He was that person too. And he was able to break out of his shell, and he used Daniel Tiger to help kids and adults to wrestle with that.
Yeah, I always liked him. And like most kids, I hated Lady Elaine Fairchild.
Yes, she's a punch. She's like she has the punch. She has the punch face. She's so scary.
She was every authority figure that I didn't like at that time, like teachers that were just unpleasant. She was always that pinched sort of like sour lemon's face that she had. But I liked King Friday the 13th because he seemed very gentle and benevolent, and he was a sweet man. Hello. And I liked him very much. And Daniel Tiger, he was like a sweet little kid. And even if you were an ornery little 9-year-old like me, you still were like okay with him. Like he's all right. Leave him alone. Don't bother that guy. But Lady Elaine Fairchild, she can just F off.
I had trouble, actually. I would have trouble looking at the TV when she was on. That's how scary.
Really,
I found her really scary. Yeah,
horrifying.
It was like the magic
Yeah,
dummy when they would
yeah.
show that commercial for Magic with Anthony Hopkins.
He
Magic
was
is
as scary
it was as scary. Yeah, it was
Fats from Magic. Yeah.
Magic is free. We're dead.
I also love King Friday because that was when SCTV did the Battle of the PBS Stars. They had Mr. Rogers in the ring with Julia Child, and he took out the King Friday puppet and started beating her with it. So that
wow.
one of my favorite moments.
Countdown to the cancellation of Mr. Rogers. You know, there's a mob of people out there looking for digging through
Just
the dirt on
waiting for something.
He's going to be the last person standing. As far as like, I don't know. I hate to be like that, but he's like, he's got a target on his back. Somebody's going to take him down. I don't know. Somebody's going to take him down. I hope not. I hope not. He really was genuinely a saint. I mean, he really was. If there's
I'm just waiting for the op-ed about how he was problematic.
Greg the Buddy. Remember that? That was a good show. That was a pretty good.
I never saw it.
Yeah, that was pretty cool show. It's Seth Green, Eugene Levy, and Sarah Silverman, done by some of the, what's that Adult Swim show?
Robot Chicken.
Robot Chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of those guys. It was a lot of puppets, and you know, they were tough puppets who lived in a world of humans. They considered themselves sort of separated from the humans and kind of downtrodden and oppressed. And you know, it's kind of that was the theme of the show.
The Who Framed Roger Rabbit of puppets, sort of.
Yeah, kind of like it was like that.
Yeah.
They considered themselves fabricated Americans. That's what they would call themselves.
Okay.
You know, it's a pretty witty show. It was. I didn't get really into it. Surprisingly, it seemed like my cup of tea, but I never got totally into it. But you know, it was what you imagine it to be. You know, these kinds of things have been attempted many times. Like you said, kind of like in that Roger Rabbit way, where you have the puppets and they're tough, and you know, they're like street smart, and they curse, and they, you know, they act in the opposite way that you would want a kid's puppet to act like. You know, that kind of thing, and you know, they have sex, and they, you know, whatever.
As a joke, that only goes so far.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that's why I just could never.
Yeah. I noticed you didn't mention Rapid Tea Rabbit, which was a rabbit puppet kids show from New York City Public Access, and it ran on the public access channel in New York City. It was a nice break from either the incredibly boring issues talk shows and the flat out smut that was on most of the time on public access. But it was a genuine kids show aimed at children that was on in the afternoons.
Wasn't it a guy dressed in a rabbit suit? That's
sometimes, but most of the time it was a puppet.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I forgot. I was thinking it was a guy in a rabbit suit. I wasn't thinking.
Primarily, it was a puppet, and I guess sometimes they would do filmed bits where he would go places, and that would be a guy in a suit. But
I do remember.
Primarily, it was a puppet. Yeah, Rapid
okay.
Tea Rabbit. Yeah.
For sure. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's on the honorable mention list for sure. There's another weird frog that's out there who's very adult frog. I wasn't going to mention him, but since you brought that up, I think it's, let me just see it now, because I got to twin those two together.
While you're there, I thought I would introduce the audience to my childhood puppet, who is right here, who I got when I was 11 years old or 10 years old, and I still have from 1977.
What is it?
I guess it's supposed to be, I always thought a spider, but now I see he has 6 legs. So I guess he's a big furry cockroach. Wow. I don't know. I've never quite understood. And I never really gave him a name. I guess I can call him Stuart now.
He's very cool.
I loved this guy when I was a kid. I got him at the old FAO Schwartz store on Fifth Avenue. So he was a kind of a high-end product, and he's still here. I still got him more than 4 years later.
I think he's awesome. I like the look of him. Yeah, I like those legs for sure.
Yeah, but it didn't really matter to me whether he was an insect or not, because when I got him home, the first thing I did was I stuffed his back 4 legs into a pair of G.I. Joe pants. And I stapled the boots onto the bottom so they would stay on. And then I dressed him in a tunic, a blue tunic from a Hugo Man of 1,000 Faces doll. So he was just a bipedal creature as far as I was concerned, and no longer a puppet at that point because of the pants. So, and that was what I made him into. And I've had him ever since.
That's awesome.
Well,
love him.
Yeah. I never came up with a good name or a good voice for him. I just...
Honorable mention right there.
Yeah.
Another one. All right, here's a few more. Tony Clifton.
Tony Clifton. Now, I understand that, I mean, Andy Kaufman is sort of doing this persona, but he's in makeup. I don't know how that qualifies as puppetry.
He was a puppet. He was made into a puppet. He did a fake kitty show, and he did a
Oh,
he did a Tony Clifton
oh
puppet.
yeah.
Yeah. I know it's like one
Now
of
I
those.
remember
I know
that.
I wasn't sure if I should include that because it's so obscure,
It's
but
really, I had no idea there was a Tony Clifton puppet until
I
this
don't know
moment.
why it just stuck in my head. It seems like a significant puppet in comedy. You know what I mean? All right, Alf. Alf. I mean, what can you do? You gotta have Alf.
Alf is a puppet.
You gotta have it.
Yeah.
Alf is a puppet.
Honorable mention. Never my favorite show. Never enjoyed
Nope,
it. Don't
nope.
know
I
why.
never, I
Didn't do it
never
for
liked
me.
Alf. And God bless him for trying. God bless him. It's good that Alf existed. I'm glad Alf existed,
It's fine. If you're
but
yeah.
it was never really that funny.
If you're 10 years younger than us and your formative years were the 80s and you consider Full House and Family Matters and Alf the seminal programs of your childhood, more power to you. But
Yeah.
not us. We were past it. We were
Right.
beyond it.
It was a nice touch that he ate cats. I mean, that was a nice touch. I appreciate that. I appreciate the effort.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It was sort of funny.
here's a
Maybe.
here's a personal one is the movie Deep Red, which is a horror movie. It's a Dario Argento, a giallo Italian movie from 1975. And one of the scariest scenes is this puppet kind of coming in through the doorway. Anyway, I'm going to show the clip. And that's it. That's it. It's just one of the greatest puppets in movies. It's
It's
just
genuinely
terrifying.
terrifying.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, and the guy in the guy in the scene destroys it by cutting into its head with a knife, and my first thought was, well, that's a poorly designed piece of machinery because you're not going to put all of the important works into the head, so leaving your machine vulnerable like that. Ideally, he should have cut its head off and it would still keep coming at him. It's
Super
very
scary.
cool and
Sorry
very
to scare you
scary.
guys. I know this is not a horror podcast, and I'm sorry that I do this to you.
It's a horror podcast now.
It is now.
You knew if the topic was puppets, some of it would be a horror podcast.
All right, since we had Emu in this episode, I have to mention Oswald the Ostrich, which was a guy who did something similar but a little different, and it was really big in the UK, really big. Like we don't know about Oswald the Ostrich here, but in the UK, you kind of know who that is.
Yeah, it's
Old-timey.
very corny stuff. It's very much your grandparents' entertainment. And if you look on YouTube, the first comment under the clip of him is like, "Whatever happened to entertainment like this?"
It's a little bit the opposite because it's so sweet compared to Emu. Like it's very sweet, but it's still clever. He does a good job with it. Like you do get the feeling that he's actually riding an ostrich. I don't know.
He's doing it the other way. He's doing the
Yeah.
thing where he has fake legs,
Right.
so he's on top of the thing, sort of, which
Yeah.
is another classic sort of fake out.
The
Which
ostrich.
reminds me, I've been to the Jim Henson exhibition here in Queens.
I've been there
and
with you.
I've been there, and I've been there multiple times. And for years and years, I never could quite figure out how Big Bird worked. Because the guy is inside Big Bird, and Big Bird's about 8 feet tall at his full height. He's incredibly tall, and there you actually get to see how the performer inside of Big Bird works. And the way it works is he gets into the suit. His hand goes into one of Big Bird's hands. His other hand goes into the other of Big Bird's hands. And then he extends his neck 3 feet above his shoulders.
You have to find the right person.
And his head. You have to find somebody with a 3 foot long neck. And
who can do that?
Yeah. And luckily they found someone who was good for that. And so he stretches his neck 3 feet, and then his head is inside of Big Bird's head. And that's how it's done. It was very fascinating to see that. Yeah.
There's very good at yoga kind of thing. You got to be really, really
I guess it's a skill you can learn over time.
Yeah.
I don't know if Sesame Street would pay for the classes for that.
All right. Well, speaking of the UK, Hartley the Hare from Pipkins. So Pipkins was 1973 through 1981. Pipkins was one of the things that was distinguished it from other children's puppet shows and any other show like that, kids shows, was that every character had its own regional accent. The pig had a Birmingham accent. Topov the monkey had a Cockney accent. Octavia,
knowing what I know about how the British feel about class and what your accent is, this is Orwellian.
Yeah. Octavia the ostrich had a French accent. I'm sure she was classy. The pigeon had an upper class English accent, which is kind of funny. Mrs. Pigeon had a Geordie accent. Is that what it's called? And Uncle Hare had a West Country English accent. Sophie the cat had a non-regional English accent, and Minnie the Badger had a Northern Ireland accent. so funny, I think,
Yeah,
yeah, it's really.
there's so much judgment going on in those choices.
So yeah, so Hartley the hare, it is really charming. Hartley does have a very charming accent.
It's a glove puppet. Mm. And you can do all sorts of things with a glove puppet. You can be naughty with a glove puppet. Can't you, Michael? Yes, that's what I've called him, you see. Michael. Well, come on, Michael. Let's you and I go and be naughty together, shall we? Yes, good.
But again, these puppets look like they're beat the hell up. They're not attractive puppets. They're not cute. They're not, and they look like they're from, someone's basement, or I don't
Well,
know,
yeah.
but it was a big show.
It's like the thing where whenever you see sort of non-Muppet Muppets, they're never quite as appealing. There's so much that goes into designing a good puppet, so that
I don't know.
and one of the things you see if you go see the Jim Henson exhibit, you get an appreciation for the simplicity of the design and how hard that is to achieve, and to make it so you look at the puppet from this angle, that angle, the other angle, and it looks good from all the angles, and it has just the right amount of expressiveness that it seems to be expressing something, but also not so much expression that it seems to always have a very specific emotion at all times, and you can project onto it, and yet it still has expressiveness to it. There's just a real artistry to that, and it's amazingly difficult to get right.
Yeah, I guess, obviously.
It is.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm saying, yeah. I mean, there's believe me, I left off puppets that were horrifying. I mean, I couldn't fit them all on the list. But speaking of horrifying, just a couple more. One in particular, Peppermint Park is pretty well known among the people who are looking for things that are spine chilling, children's things that are spine chilling. 1987 to 1988, straight to video bunch of puppets that have tiny heads and huge shoulders, and I don't know how they did it. It's a really weird, there's something, it's got this uncanny kind of weird, it's as if a person is in the puppet suit but not in the head. The head is a real puppet on a stick. I don't know, it's just horrifying. And that has actually launched some creepy pasta stories, that's like inspired, some horror rating. That's how creepy it is. But they were dead serious when they made it. But it's actually fun to look at the whole series, because it's not just these horrifying puppets, and there's humans and pigs, and they have real human hands, which adds to the creepiness of it.
Always
Yeah,
disturbing.
and then these full shoulders, and then these little tiny heads that are very flexible and that are very expressive. Actually, it's very, very creepy. But then in between, they'll have a lot of creepy footage in between of like marionettes and sort of very public accessy, like magic acts. It reminds you so much of Tim and Eric's Awesome Show. That's where they clearly, it's like one of those things that like inspired what they were doing when they were doing really kind of creepy public access stuff. It's very much like that. Before we get to number 6,
I can't wait for number 6. I'm so excited to find out. Number 6.
Yeah, Froggy the Gremlin. All right, have you ever heard of Froggy the Gremlin?
From Andy Devine?
Yeah, from Andy Devine. All right.
Yeah,
so
of course. Hey, Froggy. Yeah.
Froggy the Gremlin is this creepy frog who barely moves, really doesn't really move very much. And he has the most horrifying voice. Do you do the voice? Can you do the voice?
I can't do that voice. I just got done doing Andy Devine, and that hurts.
It's really hard.
Higher, kids, higher.
So he was a frog that would appear out of a poof of smoke. You'd say the magic words were plunk your magic twanger froggy.
Yeah, that's problematic.
Yeah.
Plunk your magic twanger, Froggy.
Plunk your magic twanger, Froggy.
Coming from Andy Devine, it's even worse.
And he'd appear in a puff of smoke. And then what he would do, his gimmick, Froggy's gimmick, there's so much to say about the show, so you're going to have to give us a few minutes here. His gimmick was you'd have some actor doing some bit. And as they were telling whatever their story was, Froggy would distract them by changing their words, and then they would go along. Now, I'll show a clip of this because it's really hard to explain.
I wish to lecture on the raising of honey bees, just as I raise them at my country estate.
At the North Pole.
Yes, children, I have a lovely estate at the North Pole, and the bees just love the cold weather. Oh, no!
Today, kiddies, I'm going to tell you the story of Goldilocks.
And the Three Stooges.
And the Three Stooges. The Three Bears!
Pasta Fasuli will show you how to blow
Your nose.
That's right.
And that was a shtick. Originally, the show was Smilin' Ed, and Smilin' Ed kicked the bucket. So Andy Devine took over. It was originally a radio show, actually, done in front of a live studio audience of kids. And Andy Devine took over after Smilin' Ed died, and they transferred it to television. But Andy was not the healthiest guy. He was, I don't know, he had issues. I don't know what they were, but he wasn't that healthy. And he did not really want to be bothered to do this live show in front of an audience of children, even though this was like 1955. Television had not been around that long. And they're already like, let's cut corners. And so what they did was they pre-taped so many segments of him, the intro to the show, the little in-betweens of the show. It was him saying the exact same words over and over. And now we have Midnight the Cat playing the piano. And it would be the exact same him saying, and now we have Midnight the Cat. They'd show the same thing over and over. They'd show the same audience of kids over and over.
Oh, Squinty, you were great. Pals stick together.
The exact same kids over and over every day. But there's even more. Now, you may have seen these clips on YouTube or Twitter because people occasionally post them up. But every single episode, he would have a song that was played by live animals. And what they would do is they would strap these poor little animals, real live animals. They'd strap them to the instrument and move their little paws. These included monkeys. Yeah. This included mice. This included a rabbit and Midnight the Cat, Squeaky the Mouse. The monkey one is like, you just want to, and they look like they're frowning.
Yes, I know, for the Bible tells me so.
But it's a mechanical thing that has them strapped down and is
delightful. Just delightful.
It is
I mean, I want to say that was a less progressive time, but you know, when you and I were kids, we had Lancelot Link's Secret Chimp. So
So
yes, we're going to do a whole episode on ape-based atrocities in comedy.
Okay, so you ready for number 6? So these people can get back to their lives?
Am I ready? We'll see. I don't know. I can't wait. The anticipation is building and it's building. Oh, no, wait, it's gone.
Still?
No, it's back.
Slightly controversial. Number 6 is Waylon Flowers and Madam. So that's slightly controversial because some people consider her a ventriloquist dummy. But
no, there's a performance.
You're the one who talked me out of that, actually.
Yeah, because there's performance there.
Yeah, she's not. She
often appears without her puppeteer.
She mostly, actually, probably in the aggregate, she mostly appears without him with it sitting in his lap, because she was so much more. First of all, she was much more mobile, and it was just a little bit of a difference in the way her body was made, and it was a little more puppet-ish. It wasn't just like the jaw going up and down.
Right. It wasn't just like the hand in the back controlling the jaw. He actually had his hand was her head. Her head was his hand, basically. Yeah. And inside of kind of a sock with her two different pieces comprising her head and her
it was
lower
a lot more puppet
mandible.
Yeah, than a ventriloquist dummy. Yeah. But then ultimately he really kind of dropped himself being, right next to her and manipulating her on camera, so that she was a full-fledged, just standalone. It
was just puppet. Madam. Yeah,
it was just Madam. And so she had a whole TV series. This went from so first of all, they got their start on the Andy Williams Show. They were on Laugh-In. They were on Hollywood Squares very famously. They were very good on Hollywood Squares.
I remember very well Madam on Hollywood Squares all the time.
Yeah, and of course, really quite outstandingly funny. And then Madam's Place went from 1982 to 1983, and so that was a standalone. That was just her show. She was as if she was a human. She starred in the show, and
wasn't it a talk show / sitcom? It was both.
Yeah, she played a talk show host.
Okay.
And so by the end of the show, usually the show ended with her with whatever guest star they had. The guest star would kind of be incorporated within the rest of the sitcom episode, the 22 minutes. And then in the end, she'd end up talking to the guest on her show. So it included a cast of characters that included Judy Landers, who I love. I love Judy. Yes. I love the Landers twins. Love the Landers twins.
Now, Now, I notice you
Can I
you
just say,
choose one over the other. Why?
I don't. No. I would never do that. Never. No.
Okay.
I was just saying I love Landers.
So it's like
and
Judy's
there's
your
Judy.
favorite out of the
No,
Landers.
I don't think so.
Because
I
I
don't
would
think I have a
wonder
favorite.
what your criteria. It was like picking
No.
Tweedledee over
I could never pick.
Tweedledum. I don't know.
I could never pick.
Yeah.
Corey Feldman also was on when he was pretty early, pretty before he was too big. And then they just had endless wonderful guests. They had Debbie Reynolds, Betty White, William Shatner, Fred Willard, Charles Nelson Riley, Arsenio Hall, Rip Taylor, Dr. Joyce Brothers, like all the classic
Oh,
people.
of course. All
They
your
had
70s game show, variety show staples at that time.
Ava Gabor,
Yeah.
Tony Tennille, Scatman Crothers.
All right. We love Scatman.
And early in his career, but playing him as in character was Pee Wee Herman. And he did on that episode,
yeah, sure.
he dates Judy Landers. It's so like Pee Wee Herman dating Judy Landers. Yes, you need to look this up. It's very good. It's as good as it sounds.
Well, those were the days.
But the reason I nominated Madam was they were really funny. I mean, they were really funny.
Yes.
Waylon Flowers was quite brilliant. He was brilliant. He was also one of the earliest outwardly gay celebrities. So huge credit for that too. He was just like, yep. And
yeah, and in that sense, Madam as a character is sort of a drag queen, really.
in a way,
kind of a way.
And it really was. It was a very nice push forward to that kind of aesthetic. It was like so mainstreamed, but you had that kind of it had definitely a gay aesthetic to it. And it was so funny. She was so funny. I mean, and even like again, if you see them on the talk shows, you see the brilliance because they're just riffing. Just an unscripted riffing was just absolutely brilliant. Or Hollywood Squares.
I break the menopause barrier every week.
What do you mean?
Coming in the other direction.
Now, you may have noticed, Waylon is no ventriloquist, and I am no fucking dummy.
Do you mind the travel?
I don't at all.
No, you like it? Do you meet any interesting people while you're traveling?
No, I travel in the luggage department downstairs in the box.
Oh, what a
I got
bummer.
a gin bottle with a nipple on it.
Maud's not too bright. I bought her a vibrator for Christmas, and she knocked out 4 teeth the first day.
Oh, go get my pacemaker thumping real fast. Then turn me down. I don't have to take that, you hippy-dippy jerk.
Senile bag of glue.
Brillo pad. We can continue this conversation in my dressing room, honey.
Good, because I have 7 words I want to call you that I can't use on television.
For the sheer brilliance of the comedy, brilliance of the puppet, wonderful. It's just an amazing puppet. I mean, she's just so wonderful looking, and she has such a great look, and it was just wonderfully articulated. And then and then just the influence, just the impact. So I thought she definitely deserved a position.
I
convince
like
me,
that. I think
yeah.
Yes, number 6, Madam.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. Yes.
All right. Well, that's part 1 of our countdown. And so thanks for hanging out with us for that. And we'll be back in the not too far future with part 2, where we'll count down from 5 to 1 and lots of other honorable mentions.
Yeah, thank you. And I look forward to the next one. I'm going to put this puppet on and I'm going to go pluck my magic twanger.
Oh God, don't tell me that. I don't want to know about that.